Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the brand new WE Knives Press Check. This is a knife that is available right now in a few different forms. So if you don't like the blue and the silver and the black, I actually really do. But if you don't like that, it's got a few different forms. I'm going to link it right down below if you guys want to check it out. It does help my channel and use my links, but that's up to you. Thanks to my generous patrons who are supporting me. There's a link for Patreon right down below. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Thanks to WE for sending this in for me to take a look at. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the WE Press Check, probably smaller than you think. This guy comes in at, you go to the scales, it's only 7.5 inches. If you want to go to the glass, I don't know if we call it, do we call it a glass breaker? It's like 7 3/4 inches. Blade length is coming in at about 3 1/4, and the cutting edge is coming in also at about 3 1/4. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? There you go, and the Ontario Rat Model 2. So it's got a bit, I mean, it's got more presence than the Rat 2, but it actually is fairly close in overall length. Let's go ahead and just do a couple more. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? And last but not least, the Benchmade Bug Out. Right about the same overall length and cutting edge as the Bug Out. Let's go ahead and do... give you guys a look at the action here. So the deten's fine. This is a typical WE. Like, it's not falling shut right out of the gate. These get smoother over time. I've actually added a little bit of 10-weight nano oil, which you can get right down in the section of the description that talks about the tools I use in this channel, the Amazon store. It's loosened up a bit, and I don't mean like the pivot has backed out. I mean, the action has gotten a little bit better. WE generally, like right when you get them, they're a bit tight. The action's decent. And then they get a little bit better over time as that detent ball wears a race into the side of the blade. But yeah, the action's fine. The detent is good, right? It's sort of a medium heavy detent, and the flipper tab shape to blade mass and shape ratio, I guess, is good. So everything feels in order is what I'm saying. Nothing spectacular, but right, you know, it's par for the course. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see there, it's no thicker than the Spyderco Para 3. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. You can see here, even with the flipper tab, we're not coming in quite as tall, but it is close. Right here, and if you go from like here, it can be close in areas, but it's not massive. Lengthwise, it's not really a whole lot longer than the Para 3, just barely. So it shouldn't be overly cumbersome for most people. Some people are still gonna say, you know, this is too big. Materials, we are looking at CPM 20 CV for the blade, layered G10 for the, we'll call them overlays, and then titanium. So weight, 3.92 ounces. Not perfect ratios, but not bad. This is still a sub 4 ounce object, and you get a decent amount of blade for 4 ounces, so I don't have a problem with that. Do with that information what you will. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. We'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel, the one I mentioned earlier. I'm going to guess that everything here is T8. Yeah, T8 on the pivot, T8 on the lock bar insert. These screws back here, those are T8. The filler screws for the pocket, like if you mount it on the left-hand side, the filler screws are T8, but the actual screws holding in the pocket clip are T6. Just use T8. Okay. Overlay screws, also a T8. We undoubtedly have screws back here holding in the backspacer. They could be T6 or T8. Not really that big of a deal. I wish everything was T8, and I also wish that there was less hardware, but what are you going to do? They're holding in an overlay. As long as you got a good place to keep your hardware and some nice quality tools, it's not really that big of a deal. Disassembly on this guy should be fairly easy. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here real quick. We have, sorry, my car keys were on top of that. Is the no, I was going to say, are the calipers about to kick the bucket? But no, they are still going. I will not change the batteries in this until it dies. Blade stock thickness coming at about 122 thousandths, probably about 120. So you're looking at roughly Ritter Hogue thickness, no issue there. So this is we're moving into the main part of the review here. I actually like the shape. This is an Auschwitz design, by the way. If you guys didn't know, that's pretty cool. This is actually a pretty interesting overall profile. We have a departure from kind of the overly minimalist theme we've seen from Wii here lately. And I've seen a couple of models. Wii is they're doing this cool thing where they're tiptoeing out of folding steak knife territory, right? Which is cool, like that's fine. They had too many models that were doing that. And we're getting back into the, doing some interesting, weird things, but not going overboard. This is a good territory for people who are interested. This is a good aesthetic approach for people who are interested in spending money in this territory, because rest assured, this is an expensive knife, right? And I think the price is fairly justified. But we in the past has gone like, all cards in on the crazy aesthetic, and then they've gone all in on the overly simple aesthetic. And this is a nice in-between where we have meaningful aesthetic elements that add character to it, like appropriate character, like where the handle and the blade goes together. It looks good, and it's got some spice, it's got some zazz, but it's not going too over the top, right? It's not Jim Carrey in an orange zoot suit, right? We're not going that nuts. It looks good. I like the pivot collar. I like the blue accents on the layered G10. That could have been carbon fiber. I honestly don't even care that it's not carbon fiber. I think this looks nice. We've got shadow boxing going on. We have these, they look like hard angles, but really they're not. The knife is fairly well knocked down on all the edges. Something that really surprised me was the size of this knife. When you look at pictures of it, I thought for sure this was at least an 8.5-inch knife. And I honestly think to properly drive this thing home, I think it should have been bigger. It has all of the personality traits of a larger knife. It's got kind of a big, chunky looking, almost kind of World of Warcraft looking blade, right? The whole thing just looks like it's supposed to be bigger. People with smaller hands, you're gonna go, oh, that's a fine size for me. But I think that, just me personally, I was just expecting it to be bigger. I don't mind that it's smaller. My hands don't have a lot of room. I can cramp a 4-finger grip in there, but that's it. If this were 8.5 inches overall, or maybe even closer to 9 inches, I think you would have made I'd be able to make a lot more use of this handle, this ergonomic design. So it's okay. It's not amazingly comfortable. Really the thing that does it in is the pocket clip. And that was one of the biggest letdowns of this design, was that it does not have a unique 3D milled titanium clip. It's titanium, but it's just a stamped clip. And we have this enormous freaking ski jumps pocket clip bill. It's just crazy. It digs right into the middle of your hand. It's not the worst clip that I've ever experienced, but it's just another this thing deserves its own cool 3D milled clip. Something that almost looks like, kind of follows the same curvature as the blade. I think if they had done a pocket clip, that you can see they've done it here. They've almost made the clip a recurve, right? I think it would have been super cool to do something like that, make it full 3D milled, right? Even if it did add a little bit to the cost. It was just kind of disappointing. So the clip it works, but it's going to dig into your hand, and it kind of takes away from the overall character of the knife, which is a real bummer, because this knife has a lot of character. You can see here how we've got, the flipper tab, and we've got these heavily chamfered edges, and it kind of matches up with how they chamfer this area back here on the backspacer. Kind of comes to this sort of crest, same way on, not completely the same, but the blade, all the lines on the blade and the edges and everything, it all just kind of matches, and it looks really good. We have this bead blast finish both on the titanium, well, it's all part of the frame, but the titanium, I guess we'll call them bolsters, or the faux bolsters. And then also this finish on the blade, which looks really, really good. There's a nice big long fuller on the blade, and you can kind of use it to reverse flick. It's not really deep enough to make that feel really good, right? But you can do it. You can make use of that notch right there a little bit. I wish that this area was jimped, but it's not. It's not really that big of a deal. Normally, I really don't like recurve blades. It takes a special recurve blade for me to like it, but I gotta say, this is a great example of a recurve blade that I like. It just looks cool, right? Recurves, it's going to help draw the material into the blade. In this case, you know, I don't know. In some situations, you might notice like, oh, that really passed through that, you know, enter whatever material you're cutting at whatever angle really conveniently, right? In most cases, I don't know if you're going to notice that much of it. I mean, like a simple drop point blade is going to cut into a package a lot easier than something like this, but this will do it, right? Got a nice thick edge up here. Not likely you're going to be doing any major damage to that unless you're doing something stupid with your knife, right? Like prying, trying to screw with it, trying to hammer with it, right? Because remember, this is a knife, not a hammer, a screwdriver, or a pry bar. But yeah, it looks good. The edge is done well. It comes down to actually a reasonably thin cutting edge. It's not a laser beam, but it's definitely not thick. It's going to cut, it's going to slice, and it's going to puncture, and it's going to look good while you do it. There's really nothing in the cutting path, and that fuller is soft and shallow enough that I wouldn't worry about much getting caught in it, right? I mean, if your job is to, you know, cut peanut butter all day, you might want to clean that peanut butter off your knife. Or whatever, but for the most part, no. You're not going to get. It's really not going to get much caught in there. Moving down here, like I said, the backspacer looks good. I really like this area right here. They could have just made this all flat and flush, and they didn't. They added a little bit of character back here, which is nice. We have a lanyard hole for lanyards. Great. It's out of the way of the pocket clip, which is how it should be. I kind of like how they did this, right? We've got this area that comes in here, and then this area, which is normally an eyesore for people when they cut it out to match the other side for the mounting position of the pocket clip, and that way they don't have to lay the pocket clip directly on top of the scale material. They cut it out, it's kind of an eyesore, but in this case, it's neat because it's layered G10, so you get to see that color coming through underneath, and it kind of goes along with the whole, oh, it's like ninja puzzle. It's like kind of what it makes me think of, like rave ninja puzzle. But yeah, like it looks good. And I like how they did that. That's smart. It's a nice way to do that without, you know, having that big, ugly, pill-shaped area on the show side of your knife. So I appreciate that. Pocket clip is plenty deep carry. Not a whole lot of the knife sticking up out of your pocket. And then we have recessed screws, which is nice. And honestly, it does function plenty well in and out of the pocket. The clip's going to do its job. It's just not comfortable when you are, you know, gripping it. The nice thing about this design is that most of the frame lock is underneath the overlay scale, meaning you're not going to have to worry too much about where you put your fingers flipping it. Your finger's going to end up somewhere down here. So you can pretty much press wherever and it's going to flip. And even when you're using it, most of the pressure from your hand is not going to be pushing on the lock bar, maybe a little bit, but most of it's going to be ending up on the clip or on the overlay scale, so that's fine. We have a stop pin that is just a regular big robust stop pin right back there, a little bit of shouldering, that's nice. We do have a lock bar insert doubling as the over travel stop, so that's great. Lockup is coming in at, sorry, I was looking to see if that was a lip there, it's not. Probably something like 20%. Let's give it a good flip, so we know where it's actually locking up. Yeah, maybe a little more than that. It's probably like 30. Well, let's look at the back of the blade here. Is that where it's, let me see where it's locking up. Okay, I see. Yeah, it's probably locking up. It's something, you can see it in there. Sorry, it's a little oily. It's probably locking up something like 35, 40%, which is fine. No blade play, up, down, left, or right. We don't have any lock stick. We have nice engagement on the lock bar, by the way, because it's cut slightly higher, or this show side's cut slightly lower, and then there's these areas are chopped out in here or scalloped out so you can get in there and use them. No double clutch, by the way. This area right here, especially when you're, this is why I feel like it needs to be bigger, right? Most people who buy this knife, I feel like your hands are going to be about the same size as mine, and you're going to feel really cramped in here. If this was 8.5 inches, you really would, this flipper tab area and this area that was jimped would not be digging so much into your hand. And I think a lot of people would enjoy it a lot more, honestly. But no double clutch, easy disengagement of the lock bar. And then we have, looks pretty centered to me. Yeah, it looks pretty spot on there. So great. Yeah, overall, I think this is really cool. How much is this knife? It's about $250. These knives are not made in the United States. They are made in China. By now, everybody kind of knows that We Knives is one of the highest quality Chinese manufacturers out there. And, you know, this is a truth that not, you know, like people who are super duper into USA made knives, I'm one of them. We don't often like to admit this, but the truth is that We Knives manufactures knives of such incredible quality. It's it's really it's some of the highest quality you can get in the world at this general price point. Not necessarily always the best, but WE makes a really good knife at about the $250 price point. They just do, right? These aren't the same things that you find at your local gas stations. This is titanium CPM 20CV, which is actually manufactured in the United States. I feel like I need to point this out because people are really confused by this. There is not Chinese 20CV and USA 20CV. There's just 20CV. It all comes from the same place. That means WE Knives is getting their CPM 20CV from Crucible. So it actually is American steel. So it's not, you need to know that. Some of that money is going back here. So just so you know, you can feel however you want about it, but these knives are factually super high quality. Yeah, so big things, the clip, especially on knives like these, like if you want, like on the really simple designs that are just kind of, there's not really a lot of character there, they're just going for a minimalist approach, okay, then fine. I'd still like them all at this price point to be 3D milled titanium clips, but fine on some of those if you really have to. On knives like these that have a lot of character and a lot of like cool, design elements, a lot of flashy elements, right? Give it a personalized clip. Give it something, right? That would be really cool. And then also when you do that, make it flat, make it shorter. Don't give it a bill. That way it's not smashing into your hand if it has to be this size. Ideally, I think this knife would be at least 8 1/4, preferably 8 1/2 inches, so you could make use of these ergonomic lines and not have to worry about being cramped up against this flipper tab. I think this blade would look awesome, really cool if it were bigger. Everything about this knife, I don't always say this, I'm not somebody who's like, every design is better if it's bigger. No, but this one, yeah, this would be better if it was bigger, I think. As it sits, I think people are still gonna like it. It's not one of those knives I'm gonna say, everybody should be rushing out and buying this right now. So it's not gonna go on my recommended knives playlist, it's for that reason. It's not something that everybody's, but a lot of people are definitely, if you like how this looks, and maybe you have smaller hands, or maybe you're not so concerned with whether or not you can get a 4-finger grip, maybe you don't care so much about the pocket clip, you'll love this knife. This is cool. This is one of the more interesting aesthetics that WE has done here lately. So yeah, I think this is neat. That's about as far as it goes for me though. Not something, like I said, not something I'm saying you gotta go out and have right now. It's not a must have, but very, very cool. I hope to see more stuff like this from WE in the future. Just less of these stamped out basic clips. This is essentially a titanium Civivi clip. No, more 3D milled clips, stuff like that. So anyways, thanks again to WE for sending this in for me to take a look at. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.